was the sound of a fucking divorce!
So, is this cartoon meant to answer the question of, what if James never joined Team Rocket and married Jessie Bell? Hi, I'm Kitty Monk. I'm here to talk to you about Helluva Boss, or more specifically, Stella Gobisha. Yes, I know Helluva Boss has yet to pass the Dagmar threshold, but I want to try to be topical, and I'll do it the best way I can, by waiting several weeks afterwards, because videos take a while, and I kinda have this thing called a life. We all know I am especially good at expectorating. Wait, that's a real word? That doesn't actually mean what I think it means? Oh. On the bright side, at least I have more time to digest my thoughts. But I have a certain way of doing things, so we're starting at the beginning. Like I said in my Stolas video, a crux of the show is his relationship with Blitz, where in exchange for access to the human world, Blitz has to stuff Stolas like a turduncan once a month on the full moon. The problem, not only is this arrangement taboo, illegal, and consent-wise kind of iffy, Stolas himself already has a family, his wife Stella and his daughter Octavia. Episode 2 focuses on the effect that the cheating has had on his family. His daughter simultaneously resents him for making her home life unbearable, but fears he might take off in the middle of the night to be with Blitz.
Are you gonna run off with him? And leave me behind? Go away where I can't find you?
Which, sweetheart, you have nothing to fear, I promise you. Meanwhile, Stella Bell is apoplectic at the cheating, especially the method of which she found out.
Sorry, I f***ed your husband.
She often throws things around and screams her head off, not caring what anybody thinks.
You want to f*** this one too?
No, of course not.
You are a goddamn embarrassment.
At first, you could say she has a right to be angry. While Stolas implies their marriage wasn't made for love, cheating is almost always an immoral action. However, it's interesting to note how she phrases it here. She doesn't seem as mad that Stolas slept with somebody who wasn't her. She seems angry that he did it with a lesser being in a super public way, which in his defense, Blitz did not give him much choice, but as far as Stella knows, Stolas did this intentionally to hurt her.
I'm not spending another moment looking at your pathetic, imp-sucking face! I believe you slept with an imp in our f***ing bed!
Plus, I doubt Blitz has ever heard of a tissue or a special sock, so yowza, I feel really bad for the maid. Most of her complaints hammer in the fact the other party is an imp, or that Stolas is acting like a poor person.
It wasn't expected. I didn't have time to go to the motel.
A motel? Like a plebeian?
Besides that, it's interesting to note the differences between Stolas and his wife. Stolas, while I wouldn't necessarily say he admires the lower classes, he has no problem living in such a manner. He watches soap operas, wears a bathrobe, and when he takes his daughter to a theme park, he dresses much like a typical dorky dad. Stella does none of that. She always wears a ball gown, even when they're in the privacy of their own home, and hosts fancy tea parties. While in episode 2, Stolas does restore his bond with Octavia, a parental bond, nothing more, the problems with Stella are still there. In episode 5, IMP learns that somebody put a hit out on Stolas, planning for him to be assassinated during the Harvest Moon Festival, but thankfully, they are able to avert it. When Stryker calls up his client, we discover it's Stella, who wants him to continue the crusade until they're able to paint pretty pictures on the wall out of Stolas' blood. You know, like in that movie. I think it was Sinister?
It won't happen again.
It better not. I don't care who you have to go through. Make it happen!
The newest episode, The Circus, recently dropped, and if you want my opinion, it's really good, check it out. Season 2 is off to a good start. This episode expanded on Stella and Stolas' relationship, revealing that the two were betrothed when they were children, specifically to sire and heir. And while Stolas was a naive child who had the fun emotionally beaten out of him, Stella was always rotten to the core. Just look at his reaction when he finds out what's gonna happen when he grows up.
You are now engaged. Congratulations. Isn't she charming? Oh, that's an ugly noise, son.
Dude, this kid hasn't learned about the birds and the bees yet, despite, being a bird himself. That's messed up. This episode also puts Stolas into a new perspective, revealing that, for years, his marriage wasn't miserable, more so one-sided, abusive, but he endured it for his daughter.
The only reason I have endured your constant insults and cruelty was for that girl to have a normal life.
He never grew up with structure. His father didn't even seem to remember which child he was.
Which son is this one? There's so many.
Which I'll admit, it's super duper misguided, but we know Stolas wasn't really in this arrangement by choice, nor was he able to leave. To some degree, he broke the cycle just by trying to be a good father, even if he isn't always perfect. After Blitz tells him off, Stolas realizes that his relationship was, as he put it, a comfortable lie, something he obsessed over because it got him through the day. And even if he might love Blitz, and or vice versa, what they have is still a toxic, misaligned relationship of convenience. Stella confronts him over this, and believing he has nothing left to lose, Stolas tells her that they're done.
What do you mean, out?
I mean out! Out of this palace, out of my life!
Stella, in exchange, swears to Stolas that there will be hell to pay.
What do you think the rest of the Goetia family will think? And Drelfus...
I don't care what your arrogant brother thinks.
One major complaint Stell Bell has gotten since episode 2 is that she's as one-dimensional as a line segment and exists to be a negative Nelly, so we don't feel bad that Blitz is essentially a giant homewrecker. At the time, I didn't really care. Season 2 had yet to be released. We didn't get Stella's side of things. Did the two like each other, but bitterness boiled over? Did they keep the peace until Stolas stuck his spoon in a dirty pot, bringing out the problems of their marriage? Well, it turns out the theories were mostly incorrect. Stella has always been bad news. At worst, you could say she resented being married to Stolas too.
I know still being married isn't a big enough occasion, but to be fair, it's no picnic being married to a boring stiff like Stolas.
But instead of making the best out of a bad situation, she took her rage out on him at every chance, down to belittling him in front of others, especially in terms of their bedroom life.
Stolas is terrible in bed. I swear to he just lays there staring at the wall and I have to do everything. It's embarrassing.
In fact, instead of having an anniversary party, the two have a not divorced yet party, and she says he can come if he wants. Like, damn.
You know I like throwing parties, plus it's true, so you can come if you want.
On top of revealing what Stolas' home life was really like, it also expands on how he and Blitz came to be. At the party, Stolas met Blitz for the first time in years. Yeah, so it turns out Stolas and Blitz knew each other since they were children. In his father's own words,
Children enjoy the circus, right? Would that distract you enough from your non-negotiable future marriage?
basically, after finding out about Stella, Stolas' father, Payman, sent him to the circus for his birthday. There, he met Blitz, and in exchange for $5 and what was likely an expired rubber, he got to have him as a playmate. Some people aren't receptive to this idea, but here's my take. Considering Stolas' wording,
Over 2 decades since I last saw you.
and the fact that Blitz was sent there to steal as much as he could, I think it was just the one time. We know by this point that it's perfectly in character for Stolas to romanticize things, either out of naivety or as a coping mechanism. Admittedly, it's a little sappy, but it could have been worse. 20 years later, Blitz broke in order to steal the grimoire. Stolas, not understanding the intentions, thought Blitz broke in to have his way with him. Out of pity, Blitz gave him a good night, stole the book, and then escaped out the balcony. Episode 9 has gotten some criticism from fans who were expecting a lot more from Stella. She's just created to be hated? That's it? Considering my video on Stolas, and the fact it's as outdated as a blockbuster VHS tape, you're likely wondering what I think. Well, I think it's alright. I kinda like the direction they're taking things. Please don't hurt me. Look, fine. I will be the first person to admit I was wrong. It helps my credibility. Usually, if I'm reviewing a show that's still in progress, I only really make a video on it if I feel like I have an idea to contribute, or if I think I have a good grasp of the path they'll eventually take. I never expected Stolas to be like Alador. And speaking of him, I never thought he was gonna be quote-unquote redeemed. I thought, considering the subject of the show, it would keep Stolas a morally great character. His arc would have been learning that in order to keep Blitz as something more than a sock puppet, he needed to treat him like an equal. Maybe, as Stolas was never allowed to consort with commoners, nor was he ever in a romantic relationship, he had no idea how to treat the other person. Or he was doing what he thought you were meant to do, so he just copied Blitz. And also, I didn't realize this until the flashback, but Stolas calling Blitz Blitzy isn't meant to be a demeaning nickname. It's his version of calling him Daddy.
Oh, stop it.
Yes, if that's what Blitzy wants.
Like, wow, dude, no wonder he hates it. My idea was that Stolas and Stella had a mutual lavender marriage. Basically, neither really conformed to the expectations of their stations, but because they were practically royals, and a royal's primary job is to make babies, they couldn't really follow their heart's desires. Perhaps there were cracks, but the cheating was the straw that broke the camel's back. Which is ironic considering how Stolas' father, in demon mythology, is depicted as a man riding a camel. Ugh, maybe he's like Zeus. I thought Stella was mad that Stolas didn't keep his home life and his love life separate, mostly because, as I said above, it would be a scandal that would embarrass not just Stella, but her entire family, their entire family, and their daughter. Obviously, that never happened. Look, I get why people are upset. We waited all this time. We came up with our own theories, and then she's just angry for the sake of it? Feels a little anticlimactic. Like, I'll be the first to say I can get really upset when my theories are proven incorrect. The Owl House put it best. Sometimes your explanations end up becoming fact. After a while, you create these little mini stories in your head, so it hurts when it turns out that's not the case. Trust me, it sucks rewatching or reading stuff and thinking, oh, this didn't happen the way I thought it did? But at the same time, I also enjoy the idea that Stella was always cold-hearted. The hints were definitely there. For one, that portrait in the kitchen doesn't prove anything. They're in public. They have to put more effort into seeming happy, if only for appearances. Stella was only ridiculing Stolas at the party because it was in front of other demons of similar status. And also, I don't trust Octavia saying,
When I was a kid and my parents didn't hate each other.
More or less, they've always been miserable, but Octavia was just too young at the time to understand. Or maybe for whatever little points you could give Stella, she might have put in slightly more effort pretending to be a happy wife and mother. Speaking of Octavia, her behavior is very telling. It seems like Stella never wants to be bothered by her. When she had a nightmare, she asked for both of her parents, but instead of saying something like, it's your turn, or you do it best, Stella just sighs.
Olivia's calling us, Stella.
You get up.
Meanwhile, in the present, she doesn't seem to care that her rantings are waking up Octavia, nor does she seem to notice her walk into the kitchen. Albeit, in her defense, Stolas didn't either, at first, but hey, at least he tried to soften the blow. And then there's the fact Stella has no problem killing Stolas. Regardless of what he did or how misguided it was, you can't deny he loves Octavia more than life itself. And Octavia loves her dad, as a father. I'm just making this point known. I found this interesting because if one parent cheated on the other, you'd probably think something like, Dad, how could you do something so terrible? Can't you see how it's making Mom feel? Octavia never references the affair in terms of Stella. All she says is,
So you two done screaming for the day?
Not only that, but Stella never calls Octavia by name. She just calls her the egg.
I'm glad one egg fell out of me so I could stop pretending to want to f*** his scrawny twigs.
So if she has no problem openly telling people that Stolas is as stiff as a board when they make love, imagine how she derides Octavia. Oh, my daughter loves weird taxidermy. Sure, according to Stolas, she goes away for the weekend and often takes Octavia with her, but that doesn't mean they're interacting with one another. She could just take her somewhere and not even talk to her, or be like, do you see you at dinner? Until then, you're on your own. That way, Stolas doesn't get to spend time with her. Perhaps considering how cold and old-fashioned Stella Belle is, this is one reason why Octavia gravitated towards her dad. He allowed her to be normal, and even if he could baby her, he was only doing what he thought she enjoyed. If Stolas leaves, Octavia won't just be losing her father. She'll be stuck under the custody of a parent who views her as a meal ticket, or has no problem forcing her to do things like marry a man man she might not love. Another reason I don't particularly mind this is because of something very important. The standard. Something I think we all know is a major problem with cartoons, not just adult cartoons, is double standards, especially when it comes to abuse. When a man abuses a woman, it's bad, and he deserves to burn. When a woman does it, either she has her reasons, or it's hilarious, or she's just doing it because she likes you. While there has been a greater understanding that female abusers exist, especially in recent years, the stigma is still there. Even in cartoons, some of the abusers get redeemed, so to speak. Beatrice Horseman, for example, while they made the point to show her backstory and said it did not excuse her actions, it at least gave her sympathy points. White Diamond, they hand-waved that she led a conquest against the universe because Steven called her a child. Shadow Weaver is a terrible person, but she still sacrificed herself. I think the only recent example I got of a female abuser who probably won't get redeemed is Odalia Blight, who many people compare Stella to. And for good reason. They don't shy away from showing that from day one, Odalia is a bad person, and arguably a narcissist, who views her children as either extensions of herself or pretty little trinkets. And even when she does what she thinks is a redeeming action, revealing to Amity and Alador that she made a deal with Bellows, she only did it to save herself, and only told them because they forced her hand. In a sense, it feels like a breath of fresh air to get a woman who was openly hateful, just for the sake of it, even if it can sometimes be a little too cartoony.
What a pathetic man!
On top of that, they're in hell. While I believe most people aren't evil, some people are just unfortunately born bad, or they never learn their lesson. Stella represents the Stolas, what would happen if he gave in to the expectations of hell, while Blitz represents what Stolas could be having if he went with his heart's desire. Plus, you could argue it puts certain actions into a new perspective. Like when Ozzy was calling out Stolas for leaving Stella, did he know that Stella was treating him like pigeon droppings? Now, I will concede that some lines in episode 9 are kind of on the nose.
I'm so good at daddying.
I like tormenting you. I want to keep reminding you of what you did.
And admittedly, Stolas is still a bad person, if only because of how he treats Blitz and how he treats commoners, but episode 9 was pretty interesting, and I still think it works. Besides, the season just started. Maybe Stella will get zapped, maybe she won't, but I am looking forward to what we'll get.
Oh, how delightful.